Welcome to another weekly Forex forecast. We start as usual on the DXY on the weekly time frame. We can see we did not have too much progression here last week. We are still sitting on the low here to the left. We are diving straight down to the 1 hour time frame. Have a look here. So we have here a small running channel. We then had this bear flag continuation. Price left a small liquidity point here, but this volume accumulation was enough then to break the low, but we only broke it ever so slightly here. That's the low to the left, and we obviously did not trigger enough volume for price to break back in impulsively for a potential turnaround. Instead, price slowly formed a 1, 2, 3 structure into this liquidity area, failed to sell off, made a V-shaped recovery, tapped the high again, and is now starting to sell off. So we can see here it's really respecting structure, and that's actually what we would like to see. We would like to see for price to remain a bit in this area and accumulate more volume here for a potential bigger next move. We are going to the 4 hour time frame. So what we ideally see is for price to make a new low here, come back up one more time, forming and expanding a clear bear flag structure, ideally even intersecting with the high here from this small running channel, and that would then be enough volume accumulated for the next bigger leg to the downside. If we then go to the daily, we can see that would also be in proportion. After such a strong impulsive move to the downside, that would then be positioned ideally and enough volume for the next leg to the downside, ultimately closing this gap here to the previous low of the overall bigger structure. Moving on to Euro US dollar, a similar picture, inverse of course. We are here on the weekly. We can see we did not have too much progression, but we tapped into this liquidity area here to the left. This is quite a significant point. We see that here on the 4 hour. This is a very significant liquidity area because it's also clearly visible on the higher time frame, on the daily time frame even. But we can see we just tapped this area ever so slightly, and very similar to the picture on the DXY inverse, of course, we did not trigger enough volume for an impulsive move to the downside and then a potential reversal. Instead, we just slowly started to correctively move away from the high. This actually is more a sign of a potential middle section for a bigger structure. We also have this small running channel, and these structures tend to tap into the start of the overall move, which then would be this liquidity area here to the left. So that's actually what I would like to see. I would like to see for price to come back one more time into this area and then give me a weighted time frame reversal candle, and then I would entertain a long from this area. Pound US dollar. On the weekly time frame, we can see here we have a potential expanding structure here. We are still in a bullish momentum run to the upside. Right now we are a bit in no man's land. We did not tap in anything significant to the left. Going down to the 4 hour time frame, we can see the next more significant liquidity area is this point here. Of course, there are some other points, or this one could still be another potential turnaround. That's something we have to consider for stop protection. But overall, we had this initial here, this the low to the high to the left. We tapped into the high. We had an initial first impulsive move, and then we had all this corrective price action, this running channel here. Then we broke out of this channel here. Actually here, that was the first breakout, a failed breakout. And then we had the V-shaped recovery in form of a 1, 2, 3 into the high. And then another double bottom, and we left this small liquidity area before we then sold off. So price always leaves some clues, and that's why I consider this one is more important, because it's really the origin of this more steeper move. It's definitely steeper than this corrective move here. It's not as impulsive as we would wish to see a move like that, but yeah, we can see some change in sentiment here. And we did not tap into this area yet. Here we can see we still left the gap. And yeah, here there is an argument for a pattern separation. You could say that this is actually here a bull flag continuation. Price broke out, retested the structure, and then moved further up. So that would mean that there is a potential base here. So that could be a base here. We have the first high, we have the second low. So if price forms something like that without tapping into the high here, then we have a bull flag continuation below the high, and that would then be enough volume to drive price potentially through this high, because price is not accumulating so much volume to just slightly tap into the high. It will most likely break through then. On the other hand, we have an argument here for an ascending channel. So that could also be an option. So we have here a 1, a 2, and a potential 3. So if we see on Monday price stepping into the high in form of a structure, and is then showing some reversal price action in this area, that's then still definitely something we could entertain on the lower time frame. We would wait for a confirmation back below the structure, preferably below this mini high here, and then on the lower time frame we could entertain a short-term short trade. Even if the overall bias is still long, we can take advantage of the move from here into the base of a potentially bigger bull flag continuation then, because this range here is still enough to warrant the trade. We're still talking of almost a 1% move, more than 120 pips move. So we can definitely benefit from a move like that. New Zealand dollar, US dollar, that's an interesting example for an evolving pattern. We are still positioned for a potential short, right? We still have this impulsive move here on the weekly time frame. We are still in a corrective phase, in a correction, and we are then looking for the next move potentially to the downside. And we also have a small gap here to this wick here to the left, to this value area. However, right now I'm leaning more a bit to the long side. We can see on the 4-hour time frame, that's the structures we were discussing before, and we can actually evolve this structure now. We have two clear highs and 2 clear lows now, so we can evolve the structure like that. And then we can also see we had an impulsive move here, and then a clear bull flag continuation, and we are now looking for the next leg to the upside. So I'm looking now for a lower time frame, some form of a lower time frame bullish continuation here, which I then could take advantage for the last leg into this higher time frame liquidity area here to the left, which then would finish the 1, 2, 3 structure for a potential bigger turnaround. US dollar yen on the weekly time frame, we are still positioned for a short, right? So we are still trading below this swing low here to the left. We see we had a doji, kind of a doji week, so it's a bit an undecided price action here last week. Going to the 4-hour time frame, we can see here we have 2 areas. So that's the first area of interest, that's the second area of interest. There is an argument for an ascending channel here. Right now here we are in no man's land, so I don't want to entertain anything here. I would like to see price at least stepping back into this high here in form of a sharp or V-shaped recovery, and I would then look on the lower time frame for a short. But preferably I would like to see price take a little bit more time to finish the bigger move here, even tapping into this area here for then a potential turnaround around in this area here. So it definitely takes a bit more patience for these setups. They are in very nice and interesting areas, but they need a bit more time to proper develop. Euro Australian dollar on the weekly time frame. That's also, again, an interesting one. We discussed that before. We are clearly overextended. This leg is clearly a lot larger than the initial leg, which led then into this bigger corrective phase here, and so we are overextended. However, euro is still stronger than Australian dollar at the moment, and when we go down to the daily, we can also see it's not as clear as it looked on the weekly time frame. Even better visible here on the 4-hour time frame. Even though the weekly candle looked like a big washout, we are still trading above the high to the left. We're still in an area where a continuation long makes sense, and we have no impulsive, no progression here. So it's more corrective price action, which then is an indication that we might see a bigger corrective phase in this area before we then see the next leg to the upside. So, and that's basically what I'm looking for. I see this as the more important liquidity area. That's still an option for a bigger bull flag continuation, but I'd like to see a structured continuation here in this area, potentially tapping in this liquidity area here. But this is more significant because it's the one who broke out and it's sharper. So we have a very clearly visible liquidity area here. So that would be the second area I would consider. But if I see clear price action on a weighted time frame, like a 4-hour time frame, I would definitely entertain a long position from here. Euro Canadian dollar, also a very interesting one on the weekly time frame. Let me shortly hide this stuff here. We were discussing that before. It was not on close watch last week. However, it triggered some alarms. We had this impulsive move and we broke this high here to the left, and this is a clear washout candle here because we really broke through and see on the 4-hour time frame. But it's still it's very similar to what we discussed before on Euro Australian dollar. It's not a very progressive price action. We can see it's definitely steeper than Euro Australian dollar. So that's why I tried to get into a trade here. Here were actually 2 trades last week. We had here on the 1-hour time frame, we had this 1, 2, 3 expanding structure, which I then tried to take the next morning. I'm trading Asia session, so I set the entry order here. Let me shortly show you this trade. That was this one. Yeah, this one. And I did not get triggered in on my broker here. We just tapped the entry order, but the spread was too big, so I missed this trade. And sorry, that was here. Yeah, but anyway, that would end up in a break even anyway, because we had we reached around 1.5, 1.55, and so that would definitely warrant a break even. So that was a missed trade, and then I completely missed the pattern evolving. That's a very similar situation like we had on New Zealand dollar, US dollar. That's a very nice example for an evolving pattern, like so. And we then can see we get a very, very clear 1, 2, 3 into this liquidity area. That's a very sharp liquidity area, and then a nice reversal candle on the 1-hour time frame. So that was a confirmed reversal. It's 2 high test candles in a row, which would then definitely justify an entry in this area, even to just trade into the low here, this liquidity point. This overall structure is a bit large for where it's positioned, so that is an indication that we might see this as a middle section for a bigger bull flag continuation, that we see something like that. But nevertheless, the entry criteria was good enough and would justify a trade. So definitely a missed trade for me. That would be a short-term overall counter trend trade into this liquidity area. But if we now see for price to finish this leg in form of this bigger bull flag continuation, and we see some reaction on this level here, then I would definitely entertain a long continuation here. Pound Australian dollar on the weekly time frame, we can see we have still 2 weeks here to the left, which we did not tap into yet. However, we tapped into the more significant high here because these two are different on chart to chart. So when you see on different brokers, these were definitely liquidity wicks. So this one, that's actually the structure high. It's a bit more important, so price could potentially turn around from here. We also had this potential 1, 2, 3 ascending channel into the high, and then quite a strong bearish reversal candle here going to the 4-hour time frame, and we can see price was made up or tapped into this area in form of a 1, 2, 3 ascending wedge, then failed. So we saw some reaction on the high. We saw some initial reaction on the high, but then failed to continue to sell off. Instead, we came back up one more time, made a double top, then tried it again, had a V-shaped recovery, and that's like a triple top now, and then finally we gained some momentum. Confirmed momentum on the 4-hour time frame. Even though it's similar situation, even though the overall bias is still more a long bias, there's still enough room for a short-term counter trend trade even into the structure low or into this liquidity area here to the left, for then a turnaround and a potential long continuation. So if I get a clear 1-hour structure here, because the positioning is actually very nice. We can see we are positioned below this low here to the left, and if we get a clear bear flag structure in this area, then that's more than enough room to manage a trade from here, at least to the structure low, preferably into the liquidity area here. And then if that's enough and price just breaks through, even better, we are in a perfect trade already. But if we see some reaction here and price starts to turn around, then we can still follow our overall higher time frame bias and enter a long trade. Pound Canadian dollar is very similar on the weekly time frame. We discussed that before. We can see here we are a bit in no man's land, so we are still trading above this more significant high to the left. And the next one area to consider is still, it's quite a long way, and we accumulated enough volume here for price to move further. Even though last week looks like a reversal candle, going down to the 4-hour time frame, we can see here again it looks stronger than it actually is in detail, because again we reached the high early in the week, so in the first half of the week, and then we started to slowly retrace more in a corrective price action, and therefore I'm looking at this in terms of pattern separation. We had here the first breakout, like it's a small volume accumulation to then finally move price through this more significant high, and then we retested it twice. So that's a bull flag continuation, broke out, retested the structure here, so that left this liquidity point here, and then we started to form the next new high. So this means this area here is for me the most important liquidity area, and that could be the first point of a potential bull flag continuation, and that's what I would ideally like to see, a second base here and then a new high and tapping one more time into this liquidity area, giving me some candlestick reversal pattern. That would be an ideal entry for a long continuation. New Zealand dollar yen, on the weekly time frame, we have still a small gap here to the low to fill the week, but we can see the last 2 weeks. The 2 weeks ago was definitely undecided price action, but last week with this low test week and then a bullish almost full body close, seems like we have at least a medium term change in momentum here on this yen pair. The other yen pairs look very, very similar. And when we go to the 4-hour time frame, we have some structure here. So we can see we have this liquidity area here, which was the 1, 2, 3 for the first base. We came back one more time, This was like a sharper V-shaped recovery, sold off. And then now that's definitely the second base here for a potential bigger expanding structure. And we have here an internal 1, 2, 3 in the making. So I'm looking here for price to at least tap into this area here, which would then finish this internal structure. And if I see some reaction here, and the yen pairs are fickle at the moment, so if we then see a strong retrace into structure followed by a lower time frame bear flag continuation, I would entertain a short in this area. On the other hand, I would also entertain a short higher up, preferably intersecting with the next higher level of a bit weaker liquidity area and this expanding structure. So that would be okay. But however, I'm still waiting for a confirmation in change of sentiment. So I would like to see a higher time frame rejection or reversal candle and then a lower time frame bear flag continuation before I would entertain a short trade. Australian dollar, Swiss francs, that's definitely a wild card. It's a bit a special one, but in terms of price action, it's quite interesting. We still have here, we had this wick here to fill. We still left the gap with the last low here, and we are now in, yeah, it's still a bit undecided, but if we look on the daily time frame, or yeah, daily is okay to have a look on the overall structure. So we can see here, we are still within, we are still here. It's the whole thing is a bit non-progressive price action. So we are since July 23, we are. It's more a sideways consolidation. It's like slowly leaning towards the downside, right? So we had a triple bottom here. We broke out one time. We retested it, came back in, broke through, but still left the gap, and then went back into this overall sideways consolidation, and then just ever so slightly made a low, went back in, made a new low, and now we are still looking for moving back in before we then finally might see a retest of the low. So, and what I'm looking for right now is on the 1 hour time frame, just to take advantage of a short-term kind of counter trend move. Because here we had this clear liquidity point to the left, which then a 1, 2, 3 into the low. We came back up with the V-shaped recovery, had a very small miss. Some brokers might actually close the gap here, but on Wanda we have a very small miss to the high here, then sold off, formed here this bull flag continuation. So that seemed to be enough volume at the time. However, it just managed to break the low ever so slightly and then came back. So that's basically a failed sell-off. Came back up one more time, then again failed to connect in this area, broke out, and then started to accumulate more volume here to now move up, and we are trading above the high. So we need very, very clear price action, but it would make sense right now for price if we accumulate a bit more volume here to move up, close this mini gap here into this area here before we might see some bigger reaction here. So that's what I would like to see actually. I'd like to see a clear 1, 2, 3 bull flag continuation here above the high here, and then I would definitely entertain a long trade into these highs here. So yeah, that's it. That's my watch list for next week. Thanks for watching. See you next week. Bye bye.